The Galactic Assembly had heard many prophets before, but none quite like Voxonic Keltheros. The ancient Cerebrillian stood at the center of the crystalline amphitheater, his translucent blue skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed his agitation. Around him, representatives from 4 to 7 species watched with varying degrees of skepticism as he raised his forearms toward the dome showing the star charts of the outer rim. They will return, Keltheros whispered, his voice carrying perfectly through the chamber's acoustic design. The ones who called themselves human, the ones we thought we had scattered to the void 3 centuries ago. A ripple of dismissive chittering echoed from the insectoid delegation. Ambassador Kickstar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans are extinct, Prophet. We have explored every system in their former territory. Nothing but dead worlds and orbital debris. Keltheros turned his massive head toward the ambassador, his 6 eyes focusing with laser intensity. Death taught them patience. Exile taught them cunning. And loss, he paused, his bioluminescence flickering to a deep crimson. Loss taught them hatred. The chamber fell silent. Even the vapor forms ceased their constant murmuring. You speak in riddles, as always, scoffed General Murden of the Hegemony Fleet. The reptilian warrior scales gleamed bronze under the ambient light. If humans survived, where are they? Why haven't our deep space sensors detected their ships? Because, Keltheros said, his voice now carrying an edge of desperation, they learned to build in the places we cannot see. They learned to hide in the shadows between stars. And they learned to make weapons from the very materials we cast them into. 300 years ago, humanity had been the rising power in the galaxy. Their expansion had been aggressive, their technology innovative, their diplomatic approach refreshingly direct. They had also been terrifyingly effective at warfare, utilizing tactics that bordered on the insane by galactic standards. When the Galactic Assembly had finally united against them, it had taken the combined fleets of 23 species to drive them back to their homeworld. Earth had burned for 7 days. The evacuation ships had been hunted down systematically, their wreckage scattered across light years of space. The few survivors had been exiled to the deep void, that region of space between galactic arms where no sane species ventured. It should have been a death sentence. Keltheros had been there, a young oracle then, reading the psychic emanations of dying worlds. He had felt something in the wake of humanity's destruction. That chilled him to his core, not despair, but determination. Not surrender, but the cold calculation of a species planning its return. I have seen the signs, he continued, his voice growing stronger. Ships moving between dark nebulae, transmissions and frequencies we don't monitor, mining operations in systems we've written off as barren. They're building something out there, something vast. Commander Elaria Voss of the Republic Navy leaned forward. The Altarian's silver eyes narrowed with interest. Unlike the others, she had studied the human conflicts. What kind of evidence do you have, Prophet? Keltheros gestured, and his neural interface projected a holographic display. Star charts appeared, showing subtle gravitational anomalies, unexplained energy signatures, and the disappearance of automated probe ships in the deep void. For the past 50 years, these incidents have been increasing. Patrol ships report mechanical failures in specific regions. Deep space monitoring stations go dark for minutes at a time. And yesterday, he paused, his bioluminescence pulsing rapidly. Yesterday, our long-range sensors detected a massive energy signature moving through the Cerulean Nebula. It was there for exactly 17 seconds before vanishing. Sensor ghosts. General Murden waved dismissively. The deep void plays tricks on instruments. The signature was 200 kilometers long. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates accused Keltheros of fear-mongering. Others demanded increased patrols. A few quietly began calculating the defensive capabilities of their home systems. Keltheros watched it all with the resigned patience of one who had lived along and seen too much. He had spent decades trying to convince them, providing evidence that was dismissed as coincidence, offering warnings that fell on deaf ears. The galaxy had grown comfortable in its peace, prosperous in its trade, confident in its superiority. But the Cerebrillian could feel it in the quantum foam that connected all living minds across space. A presence returning from the void, carrying with it the accumulated rage of a species that had been cast out to die, but had instead learned to thrive in the darkness. As the debate raged around him, Keltheros closed his 6 eyes and reached out with his consciousness, probing the edges of known space. There, In the spaces between thoughts, he felt them human minds. Cold and patient and absolutely merciless, they were coming home, and when they arrived, the galaxy would remember why it had taken 23 species to drive them out the first time. The merchant vessel Prosperity Dawn had been traveling the Kepler trade route for 37 years without incident. Captain Nexara Tolan had inherited the ship from her clutch mother, had planned to pass it on to her own offspring. The route was considered one of the safest in the galaxy, a well-traveled path between the industrial worlds of the hegemony and the agricultural colonies of the Republic, which was why the massive shadow that suddenly appeared on her sensors couldn't possibly be real. Yalora, run a full diagnostic on the sensor array, she ordered her navigator, a young Cerebrillian whose neural implants glowed softly as he interfaced with the ship's systems. Sensors are functioning normally, Captain, he reported, his voice tight with confusion. But this reading, it shows a vessel approximately 4 times our size directly ahead. Captain Tolan stared at the empty space before them, visual, nothing. But the mass signature is undeniable. Before she could respond, her communications officer's head tendrils writhed in agitation. Captain, we're being hailed. The signal is strange. It's coming from the coordinates of the mass reading, but put it through. The view screen flickered, then displayed a human face. Captain Tolan's 3 hearts stopped beating. It was impossible. Humans had been extinct for 3 centuries, yet there he was, pale-skinned, binocular vision, that disturbing symmetrical bone structure that had always made other species uncomfortable. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his eyes held a coldness that seemed to pierce through the screen. Greetings, the human said in perfect galactic standard. I am Fleet Commander Casper Nightfall of the Terran Reclamation Force. You are Captain Nexara Tolan of the merchant vessel Prosperity Dawn, registered to Nexus Corporation. Your cargo manifest lists rare earth minerals from the Dracona system. This is impossible. Tolan whispered. You're extinct. A ghost of a smile crossed the human's face. Greatly exaggerated. Captain, now, you're going to transfer your cargo to our ship. Then you're going to return to the nearest assembly station and deliver a message. I will do no such thing. You have no authority. The human raised his hand, and suddenly the Prosperity Dawn lurched as if struck by an invisible force. Alarms began wailing throughout the ship, shields at 30%. Yalora shouted, Captain, whatever hit us, I can't see it. Cloaking technology, Commander Nightfall said calmly. We've had 3 centuries to improve our designs. Your shields are impressive, Captain, but they won't survive another hit. Transfer the cargo. Tolan's tactical officer, a veteran hegemony warrior named Krextos, reached for his weapon controls. Captain, give me the order. I'll show this human ghost what real firepower looks like. By all means, Nightfall said, as if he could hear the conversation. Fire at will. Krextos unleashed everything the merchant vessel had: plasma cannons, iron torpedoes, even the mining lasers. The space ahead of them lit up with weapons fire. But the shots passed through empty space. Interesting, Nightfall observed. Face shifted. Holes weren't common in our time. We learned much from studying your wreckage over the years. Another invisible impact rocked the Prosperity Dawn. This time, sparks flew from control consoles as systems overloaded, shields down to 5%. Yalora's bioluminescence had turned a sickly yellow. Captain, we have to comply. No, Tolan said firmly. We are citizens of the Galactic Assembly. We don't negotiate with. The third impact wasn't against their shields. It punched straight through the hole near the engine compartment, causing explosive decompression. Emergency force field snapped into place, but the message was clear. The next shot will be through your bridge, Nightfall said. Your crew has families, Captain. Don't make them orphans for the sake of cargo. With trembling hands, Tolan activated the cargo transfer protocols. External grappler arms extended from the invisible ship, and the Prosperity Dawn's valuable mineral cargo was systematically stripped away. Excellent. Now, the message. Nightfall's image leaned forward. You will tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them we remember every world they burned, every ship they destroyed, every child they killed. Tell them we've had 300 years to prepare, and we've learned patience. The Assembly will mobilize against you, Tolan said. You're outnumbered 1,000 to 1, are we? Nightfall smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't cold, it was excited. Look at your long-range sensors, Captain. Tolan nodded to Yalora, who expanded the sensor sweep. What they saw made her blood freeze. Dozens of massive signatures were appearing throughout the sector, ships materializing out of the void like ghosts, becoming solid. We didn't just survive, Captain. We multiplied. We adapted. We evolved. Nightfall's image began to fade, and now we're coming home. The transmission cut, and the mass signature vanished from their sensors. The Prosperity Dawn drifted alone in space, its crew staring at the empty void that had just robbed them blind. Set course for Station Omega 7, Tolan ordered quietly. Maximum burn. As they fled toward the nearest assembly outpost, none of them noticed the small probe that detached from their holoprobe that would track their every movement, monitor their every communication, and report back to the fleet that now moved through the darkness between stars like a plague of metal and vengeance. The galaxy's 3 centuries of peace had just ended. Admiral Corvick Olthan had commanded the Assembly's 3rd Fleet for 22 years, but he had never seen anything like the tactical display before him. 17 ships had vanished in the past week, all along the outer trade routes. The few survivors who made it to safety told impossible stories of invisible attackers and extinct humans. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, we've just received confirmation from the Altarian Republic. 3 more cargo vessels hit in the Vegas sector. Same pattern, complete cargo theft, minimal casualties, and survivors left to spread the word. Olthan studied the holographic map floating above his command table. The attacks formed a clear pattern, a gradual tightening noose around the Assembly's most prosperous systems. They're not trying to hide their presence anymore. They want us to know they're here. But why reveal themselves now? Asked his tactical officer. Commander Rayla. The Mantid's compound eyes reflected the display's light. If they've been building strength for 3 centuries, why not strike at full force? Because they're playing a longer game, Olthan realized. They're forcing us to spread our forces thin, responding to threats across the entire frontier. Meanwhile, they're learning our current capabilities, our response times, our tactics. A priority alert chimed through the bridge. Admiral, his communications officer called out. Urgent transmission from the Nexus corporate headquarters. One of their deep space mining operations has gone dark. Another raid. No, sir. Complete loss of contact. The Zirian mining platform is simply gone. Olthan felt his respiratory sacs constrict. The Zirian platform was massive. A mobile mining operation that employed over 50,000 beings. Gone how? The view screen activated, showing a recording from a nearby monitoring station. Space appeared normal, showing the massive platform's lights twinkling against the void. Then, without warning, brilliant blue energy beams lanced out from nowhere, striking the platform's critical systems. The structure began to break apart, but not randomly with surgical precision. The reactor core was extracted intact, along with the weapons array and the shield generators. They're not just raiding cargo, Rayla whispered. They're harvesting technology and personnel, Olthan added grimly. Escape pods were launching, but watch the trajectory analysis. The display highlighted the escape pods' paths. Rather than scattering randomly, they were being systematically collected by invisible forces. They're taking prisoners, the communications officer confirmed. Skilled technicians, engineers, scientists, anyone with specialized knowledge. Olthan's mandibles clicked anxiously. The humans weren't just returning, they were upgrading. Recall all patrol squadrons. I want every available ship concentrated at Strategic Point Gamma. If they want to play games, we'll force them into open battle. 3 days later, the trap was set. 9 to 7 assembly warships waited in formation around the Celestial Gate, a critical hyperspace junction that connected 5 major trade routes. The humans would have to come this way if they wanted to continue their campaign. They didn't have to wait long. Contact, the sensor operator shouted, multiple signatures emerging from hyperspace. Distance, 20,000 kilometers. The tactical display lit up with red icons. 5 to 7 human vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their sleek black hulls reflecting no light. They were larger than the ships from 3 centuries ago, more angular, more predatory. All ships, weapons free, Olthan commanded. Target the lead vessels. The space between the fleets erupted in a symphony of destruction. Plasma cannons lanced across the void. Iron torpedoes streaked like falling stars, and energy shields flared as they absorbed impact after impact. But something was wrong, sir. Rayla reported, our weapons are having reduced effectiveness. Their whole armor is absorbing and dispersing our energy weapons. On the display, human ships weaved through the assembly formation with impossible grace. Their weapons angular devices that fired coherent beams of superheated matter cut through assembly shields. Like they were tissue paper, the Hegemon's Pride, a massive dreadnought, took a direct hit amidships. The beam punched through all 7 decks, vending atmosphere and bodies into space. But the human ship responsible didn't pause to savor its victory. It immediately turned its attention to the next target. They're not fighting like they used to, Olthan observed with growing horror. Where's the chaos? Where's the berserker rage? The humans had always been feared for their unpredictable tactics, their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. But these ships moved with mechanical precision, each attack calculated for maximum damage with minimum waste. Admiral, his tactical officer called out, I'm reading massive energy buildups in the lead human vessels. Whatever they're charging, it's beyond anything in our databases. The 5 largest human ships, each one a kilometers-long leviathan of black metal and energy conduits, began to glow with an inner light. Sections of their hulls retracted, revealing weapon arrays that defied classification. All ships, emergency. Jump, Olthan ordered. Now, but it was too late. The human ships fired simultaneously, each one unleashing a beam of pure annihilation that could be seen with the naked eye. From neighboring star systems, the beam swept across the assembly formation. Like Siths, and everything they touched simply ceased to exist. 23 assembly warships evaporated in an instant. The survivors, their formations shattered and their confidence broken, began an immediate retreat. Sir, the communications officer reported with a trembling voice, the humans are hailing us. Put them through. The face that appeared on screen was different from the merchant Raid Younger, with cybernetic implants along his jaw and temple. I am Battle Coordinator Vex Mortalis of the Terran Reclamation Force. You fought well, Admiral. Your tactics were sound, your courage admirable. Unfortunately, your technology is 3 centuries out of date. What do you want? Olthan demanded. Surrender. Mortalis said simply, you can continue this futile resistance and watch your fleets burn one by one, or you can acknowledge the new reality. Humanity has returned, and we are no longer the species you remember. The transmission ended, leaving Olthan staring at the tactical display. 7 to 4 assembly ships had entered the battle. Only 31 remained operational, and most of those were damaged. As his fleet limped toward the nearest assembly stronghold, Olthan realized with crystalline clarity that the galaxy was about to experience something it had never faced before. Humans who had learned patience, humans who had mastered their rage, and humans who had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. The real war was just beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly had been called within hours of Admiral Olthan's devastating report. The crystalline amphitheater, usually filled with the civilized discourse of interspecies politics, now buzzed with barely contained panic. Delegates who had dismissed Prophet Keltheros just weeks ago now hung on his every word as he stood before the holographic displays showing the extent of human infiltration. The Kepler trade route is completely compromised, General Murden reported, his bronze scales dulled with stress. They've established checkpoints at every major junction. Any ship that refuses to submit to cargo inspection is destroyed without warning. It's not just theft anymore, added Commander Voss from her position at the tactical podium. Intelligence reports indicate they're studying every piece of technology they capture. Our latest sensor arrays, our shield generators, our weapon systems. They're reverse engineering everything and improving upon it. Ambassador Kickstar's mandibles clicked nervously. How many worlds have they approached for recruitment? The question hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. 3 mining colonies had already switched sides, their populations lured by promises of advanced technology and protection from assembly taxation. The defections weren't random. Humans were specifically targeting worlds with grievances against the assembly, colonies that felt exploited or ignored. 17 systems have declared independence and requested Terran protectorate status. Voss replied grimly, they're offering immediate infrastructure upgrades, defensive fleets, and complete autonomy in internal affairs. It's effective. High Counselor Zephyrin, leader of the assembly, rose from his ornate seat. The ancient ethereal's energy form flickered with agitation. We must respond decisively. The humans are testing our resolve, measuring our capabilities. If we show weakness now, more systems will defect. What do you propose? Asked General Murden. Operation Stellar Cleanse, Zephyrin announced. We mobilize every available fleet from the core worlds. 700 ships, the largest armada in assembly history. We will jump directly to their staging area in the deep void and end this threat permanently. Prophet Kelthero stepped forward, his bioluminescence pulsing urgent orange. High Counselor, you're making the same mistake we made 3 centuries ago. You're underestimating them. They're advanced, yes, but they're still outnumbered, Zephyrin replied. Our intelligence suggests their fleet numbers fewer than 200 ships. And how many ships did the original Earth evacuation fleets have when we drove them out? Keltheros asked pointedly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. Fewer than 50 ships had escaped Earth's destruction, carrying perhaps 1 million survivors into the void. They've had 3 centuries to reproduce, to build, to plan. Keltheros continued. The ships you've seen are not their entire fleet, they're scouts, advanced forces. You're about to walk into the same trap that nearly destroyed the assembly. The first time, but Zephyrin had already made his decision. The operation launches in 72 hours. This cancer will be cut out before it can spread further. 2 weeks later, Admiral Corvick Olthan found himself commanding the largest military force in galactic history. As it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the deep void, 739 ships stretched across space in a formation that could have engulfed entire star systems. Such a sweep complete, his tactical officer reported. I'm reading. Nothing. No ships. No installations. No energy signatures. Expand the search grid, Olthan ordered. They have to be here somewhere. For 6 hours, the massive fleet searched the region where intelligence had indicated the largest concentration of human activity. They found nothing but cosmic dust and dark matter. Sir, the communications officer called out. Priority message from Fleet Group Epsilon. They found something. The tactical display updated to show Fleet Group Epsilon's position, 30 light minutes away. They had discovered a massive artificial structure space station that dwarfed anything in. Assembly records. Its black hole absorbed sensor beams, making detailed scans impossible. All fleet groups converge on Fleet Group Epsilon's position, Olthan commanded. Battle formation Omega. As the fleets began their ponderous movement across the void, sensors detected a new contact. A single human ship, smaller than a frigate, approached from the direction of the mysterious station. They're hailing us. The communications officer reported. The view screen activated, revealing a human female with steel gray hair and eyes like frozen nitrogen. I am Supreme Admiral Lyra Voidheart of the Terran Reclamation Force. Welcome to Tombstone Station, Admiral Olthan. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to interstellar law, Olthan replied formally. Voidheart smiled, and it was like watching a predator bare its teeth. Admiral, you've brought 700 ships to destroy us. I want to give you a fair chance to reconsider. You're outnumbered nearly 4-1, am I? Voidheart gestured, and the space around Tombstone Station suddenly filled with contacts, not ships' weapons platforms. Hundreds of them, each one bristling with the same annihilation beams that had devastated Olthan's forces at the Celestial Gate. Tombstone Station isn't just a base, Voidheart explained. It's a fortress, built from the hulls of every ship you've ever sent to hunt us, powered by the engines of every world you denied us, and armed with weapons forged from pure hatred. All ships opened fire, Olthan commanded. The space between the station and the assembly fleet erupted into chaos. Plasma cannons, ion torpedoes, and graviton bombs streaked across the void, only to be absorbed by the station shields or intercepted by its defensive systems. In response, the weapon platforms began their own barrage, the first wave of annihilation. Beams struck Fleet Group Alpha, instantly vaporizing 17 ships. The second wave targeted Fleet Group Beta, carving through their formation like a hot knife through ice. But this time, the humans didn't stop with a demonstration. They kept firing. Ship after ship vanished in bursts of superheated plasma. The invincible Dawn took a direct hit to its reactor core, exploding in a miniature supernova that consumed 3 nearby vessels. The Hegemony's fist tried to ram one of the weapons platforms, only to be caught in a tractor beam and systematically dismantled, its crew spacing into the void. All ships, emergency retreat, Olthan ordered, but it was too late. The weapons platforms had formed a perimeter, and every ship that tried to jump to hyperspace was intercepted and destroyed. In 40 minutes, the largest fleet in assembly history was reduced to floating debris and screaming radio transmissions. Admiral Olthan's flagship, crippled but still intact, drifted powerless among the wreckage. Supreme Admiral Voidheart's image appeared on his screen one final time. "Tell them we're coming home, Admiral. Tell them that the children of Earth remember every slight, every insult, every act of genocide. And tell them that when we arrive at their core worlds, we won't be coming as refugees begging for mercy." The transmission ended, leaving Olthan alone with the knowledge that the Galactic Assembly had just lost the war. Before it truly began, the siege of Proxima Centauri had lasted 43 days, and the system's defenses were finally beginning to crack. From the command deck of the Righteous Vengeance, Fleet Admiral Arctur Soulforge watched as another defense platform's shields collapsed under the relentless barrage of Terran siege weapons. "Status report," he commanded, his artificial vocal cords producing sounds that seemed to resonate from the depths of hell itself. "Orbital defense grid is down to 37% functionality," reported his tactical coordinator, a cyborg, whose human features were barely visible beneath layers of combat augmentation. "Their ground-based particle cannons are still operational, but we've identified the primary power nodes." Soulforge nodded, his scarred face illuminated by the tactical display. 3 centuries of exile had changed humanity in ways the galaxy couldn't comprehend. Where once they had been driven by passion and rage, they were now creatures of cold purpose. Their bodies enhanced by cybernetics, their minds linked by quantum consciousness networks. "Initiate Phase 7, Soulforge ordered. Deploy the Reaper squadrons throughout the Terran fleet." Bays opened to release swarms of single-pilot craft unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. The Reapers were part fighter, part missile, part guided bomb, and completely expendable. Their pilots had volunteered for neural integration with their craft, becoming living weapons that could think and adapt in real time. The Assembly Defenders, marshaled under the banner of the Hegemony Guard, scrambled to intercept the incoming swarm. Admiral Krextos, the same warrior who had once served as a tactical officer on the Prosperity Dawn, now commanded the system's defense forces from the battlecruiser Unyielding Justice. "All fighter squadrons, intercept Pattern Delta," he ordered. "Priority targets are the Reaper craft. Do not let them reach the defense platforms." The space between the fleets became a hurricane of destruction. Hegemony fighters, piloted by the Assembly's most elite warriors, engaged the Reapers in dogfights that defied physics. The human craft moved with impossible coordination, their pilots' minds linked in a shared consciousness that allowed them to anticipate every move, counter every tactic. But the Reapers had a purpose beyond mere victory. As they engaged the enemy fighters, they began to glow with internal energy, their power cores overloading in carefully calculated sequences. "They're not trying to win," Admiral Krextos realized with horror. "They're trying to." The first Reaper detonated in the middle of a Hegemony squadron, its antimatter core creating a brief star that consumed everything within a kilometer radius. Then another exploded, and another. Each detonation was precisely timed and positioned to cause maximum damage to the defense grid. "Sir," Krextos' tactical officer reported, "we're reading massive energy buildups in the Terran capital ships. They're preparing to fire their primary weapons on the Righteous Vengeance." Admiral Soulforge watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Reaper sacrifices had opened gaps in the defense perimeter exactly as calculated. "All ships, target the planetary defense grid, Pattern Omega-7. The Terran fleet's main guns spoke in unison, not the surgical precision beams they had used before, but weapons of absolute annihilation that turned matter into energy and energy into nothingness. The orbital defense platforms, massive structures that had protected Proxima Centauri for 2 centuries, simply ceased to exist. But Admiral Krextos wasn't finished. As the orbital defenses died, ground-based installations across the planets, surface opened fire, massive particle cannons, each one capable of cracking a moon, set beams of concentrated death toward the Terran fleet. The Hammer of Justice, a Terran battleship, took a direct hit amidships. Its hull, forged from materials that shouldn't exist, began to buckle and tear. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as critical systems overloaded. "Hull breach on Deck 7 through 15, the ship's captain reported over the fleet network, reactor containment failing. We have maybe 3 minutes before the transmission cut off as the Hammer of Justice exploded, taking with it the 1,700 crew members who had chosen death over dishonor. But even as they died, the ship's final act was to ram into the nearest hegemony vessel, the cruiser Stellar Guardian, dragging it into mutual destruction. Planet-side casualties are mounting, Admiral Soulforge observed without emotion. Estimated population 2 billion. Begin orbital bombardment protocol. The order was transmitted across the quantum network, and every human in the fleet felt the same cold satisfaction. Proxima Centauri had been one of the staging areas for the original war against Earth. Its factories had built the weapons that burned human cities. Its corporations had profited from human suffering. Now it was time for the reckoning. Bombardment pods launched from every Terran ship, each one containing a fragment of Earth's irradiated soil, a symbolic gesture that carried practical purpose. The pods punched through the planet's atmosphere and impacted major population centers. Their payloads designed not to destroy immediately, but to corrupt and poison. Admiral Krextos watched in horror as his homeworld began to die. All ships, ramming speed. We stop them here, or they'll do this to every world in the assembly. The remaining hegemony vessels, their formation shattered, but their resolve intact, accelerated toward the Terran fleet. It was a desperate gambit, trading certain death for the possibility of taking some of the enemy with them. The unyielding Justice led the charge, its weapons blazing even as Terran fire stripped away its armor. Krextos stood on his bridge, watching his tactical display fill with red indicators as system after system failed. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "priority transmission from the planet. It's the civilian evacuation centers. Put it through." The view screen filled with images of chaos, civilians fleeing burning cities, children crying for parents who would never answer, entire species facing extinction because they had chosen the wrong side in a war that began before they were born. For a moment, Admiral Soul Forge's expression flickered with something that might have been regret. Then his cybernetic implants pulsed, and his face returned to its mask of cold purpose. The galaxy chose this fate when it chose to burn Earth. He said to no one in particular, "Continue the bombardment." The battle for Proxima Centauri ended as the system's star began to flicker. The Terran fleet, using technology scavenged from 100 conquered worlds, had destabilized the stellar core. In approximately 6 hours, the star would go nova, ensuring that nothing would ever grow in this system again. As the surviving human ships prepared to jump to their next target, Admiral Soul Forge received a quantum transmission from Supreme Admiral Voidheart herself. "Phase 8 is complete," she reported. 17 assembly core worlds have fallen. The galaxy is beginning to understand the cost of their choices. Soul Forge nodded, his scarred features illuminated by the dying star's light. "Then it's time for the final phase. Set course for the assembly capital." Acknowledged. "And Admiral, try to leave some of them alive. Someone needs to remember what they've brought upon themselves." The council chamber of the Galactic Assembly had never witnessed such desperation. Representatives from 47 species crowded around holographic displays, showing the systematic destruction of their civilizations. In the past 6 months, humanity had reduced 12 core worlds to radioactive wastelands and forced the surrender of 31 more. High Counselor Zephyrin's energy form flickered with barely contained panic. "Military status. Report, General." Murden, his bronze scales now pale with exhaustion, gestured to the tactical display. "We have 137 operational warships, remaining from the original 700. The humans have been efficient in their targeting. What of the evacuation fleets? Struggling to stay ahead of their advanced squadrons. Every ship we send to escort refugees becomes another target for their hunters." Murden's voice carried the weight of too many defeats. "They're not just conquering territory, they're ensuring nothing we've built can ever be rebuilt." Ambassador Kickstar's mandibles trembled. Perhaps we should consider surrender. Negotiate terms." "There are no terms," Prophet Keltheros spoke from his position near the chamber's center. The ancient Cerebrillian had aged decades in the past months, his bioluminescence now a constant, fearful red. "I've reached out with my consciousness, touched the edges of their collective mind. They don't want surrender. They want extinction." Commander Elaria Voss stepped forward, her silver eyes reflecting the chamber's dim lighting. "There's one option, the Omega Protocol." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate knew what she meant: the galactic civilization's ultimate failsafe. A weapon so terrible that its very existence had been classified beyond the highest security clearances. "The Stellar Annihilator has never been tested, General." Murden protested. "The theoretical models suggest it could destabilize an entire star cluster. It was designed to crack the galactic core if necessary," Voss replied grimly. "A weapon to end all weapons, built in the darkest days of the first human war. We swore never to use it." That was before they began systematically exterminating entire biospheres. Zephyrin countered. How long before they reached the core worlds? How long before our children breathed radioactive ash instead of air? The debate might have continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent chime from the chamber's communication system. The view screen activated, showing the face of Admiral Korvik, Althan, one of the few senior commanders to survive the disasters of recent months. High Counselor, Althan's image was distorted by interference. The humans have arrived. Their main fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus system. We have perhaps 6 hours before they reach the capital, through the chamber's transparent dome. The delegates could see the distant flicker of weapons fire as the system's outer defenses engaged the approaching enemy, even at this distance. The scale of the battle was evident. Entire moons were being cracked open by weapons that defied comprehension. How many ships? Zephyrin asked. Over 400, Althan replied. Sir, I've never seen anything like their flagship. It's the size of a small moon, and it's broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. The view screen split, showing Admiral Althan on one side and a human face on the other. This wasn't Supreme Admiral Void Hart or any of the other commanders they'd encountered. This figure was different, ancient beyond measure, with skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes that burned with the cold fire of dying stars. I am Eternal Commander Magnus Doomright. The figure spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the chamber's very structure. Last survivor of Earth's High Command, I have come to witness the final act of our return. High Counselor Zephyrin stepped forward. Commander, surely we can. There is nothing to discuss. Doomright interrupted. 3 centuries ago, you burned our children alive on 17 worlds. You hunted our evacuation ships like animals. You scattered our people to the void and told yourselves you were bringing peace to the galaxy. The image shifted, showing scenes from the first human war orbital bombardments, burning cities, ships full of refugees torn apart by pursuing fleets. But you made one crucial error. Doomright continued. You assumed that exile would break us. Instead, it forced us into something new. We are no longer the species you remember. We are the accumulated rage of the dead, given form and purpose. The past is past. Zephyrin pleaded. We can build a new future. The future belongs to the children of Earth. Doomright replied. And for that future to exist, the architects of genocide must answer for their crimes. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Outside, the flicker of weapons fire was growing brighter as the human fleet carved through the system's defenses. Activate the Omega Protocol, Zephyrin commanded. Authorization, Zephyrin Alpha 77. Confirmed, General Murden replied. Murden Beta 93. One by one, the senior military commanders added their authorization codes. The Stellar Annihilator, hidden in a secret facility at the galaxy's core, began its activation sequence. Time to deployment, Zephyrin asked. 4 hours, Voss replied. The weapon needs to charge, and we need to position it for maximum effect, sir. Admiral Althan's voice crackled through the interference. Their vanguard has reached the inner system. The orbital shipyards they're gone. Through the chamber's dome, a new star briefly blazed in the sky as the Nexus system's primary industrial complex was vaporized. The delegates watched in silence as 3 centuries of civilization burned above their heads. There, as something else. Althan continued. We're intercepting human communications. They're not planning to occupy the capital. They're going to sterilize it. Prophet Keltheros closed his 6 eyes and reached out with his consciousness, touching the vast network of human minds approaching their world. What he found there made his bioluminescence flicker to black. They're going to crack the planet's crust, he whispered, turn it into a molten wasteland. They don't want to rule us, they want to erase us so completely that future archaeologists will never know we existed. Then we make our stand here, Zephyrin declared. Every ship, every defense platform, every weapon we have left, we hold them for 4 hours. Sir, General Murden's voice was barely audible. Our remaining forces won't last for minutes against that fleet. Then we'll have to pray that for minutes is enough. As the delegates dispersed to their respective evacuation protocols, Keltheros remained behind, staring up at the approaching doom. His consciousness could feel them now, thousands upon thousands of human minds, cold as the void between stars, patient as gravity, and absolutely merciless in their purpose. The galaxy had sown the wind 3 centuries ago. Now it would reap the whirlwind. Outside, the first human ships entered orbit. their shadows falling across the capital city like the wings of carrion birds. The final battle for galactic civilization was about to begin, and Prophet Keltheros knew with crystalline certainty that only one species would see the dawn. The question was no longer who would win, but whether anything would survive to remember the war. The stellar annihilator fired exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes after activation, its beam of pure entropy punching through dimensions that had no names in any living language. The weapon, built from the combined scientific knowledge of 47 species and powered by the controlled collapse of 3 neutron stars, was designed to unmake the fundamental forces that held matter together. It struck Eternal Commander Magnus Doomright's flagship at the exact moment the massive vessel began its final bombardment of the assembly capital. For precisely 0.003 seconds, the laws of physics ceased to function in a sphere roughly the size of Earth's moon. Matter forgot how to exist. Energy forgot how to flow. Time itself stuttered like a broken mechanism. Then reality reasserted itself with catastrophic violence. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems, a brief, impossible nova that outshone the system's primary star. When the light faded, the human flagship was gone, along with 17 other vessels caught in the weapon's effect radius. In the Assembly Council chamber, the delegates watched their tactical displays with desperate hope. Had they done it? Had they stopped the human advance? Their answer came in the form of Magnus Doomright's voice, still broadcasting on all frequencies despite the fact that his ship no longer existed. Impressive, the Eternal Commander said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that suggested he was speaking from somewhere beyond conventional space-time. You actually managed to kill me. Unfortunately, death is no longer the limitation it once was. The view screen activated, showing Doomright's image. He looked exactly the same, except for his eyes. They now held the depth of interstellar void, as if the human had become something more fundamental than flesh and bone. 3 centuries of exile taught us many things, he continued, including how to transcend the traditional boundaries of mortality. Did you really think we would remain vulnerable to conventional weapons? High Counselor Zephyr's energy form flickered with desperate defiance. You're dead. I saw your ship destroyed. Ship is just metal and circuits. I am the accumulated will of humanity itself, given consciousness and purpose. Doomright's image smiled, and galaxy seemed to will behind his teeth. Your weapon was powerful enough to unmake matter, but it could not unmake the idea of vengeance. On the tactical displays, the remaining human fleet began to move with renewed purpose. But now they weren't just ships, they were extensions of a single, vast intelligence that had learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. However, Doomright continued, your desperation has taught me something important. You are capable of evolution, even in the face of extinction. This pleases me. Admiral Othan's voice crackled through the communications system. Sir, the human fleet is. They're withdrawing. All ships are pulling back to minimum engagement range. The delegates looked at each other in confusion, victory snatched from the jaws of defeat. It seemed impossible. I have a proposition, Doomright announced. For 3 centuries, you have lived in peace while we suffered in exile. You have grown soft, comfortable, weak. You have forgotten the price of survival in a hostile universe. His image gestured, and the tactical display shifted to show the galaxy as a whole. Beyond the rim, in the spaces between galactic arms, new contacts were appearing, vast alien presences that made the human fleet look insignificant by comparison. While you squabbled over trade routes and territorial disputes, while we plotted our return, something else has been watching. The Devourer's entities from the void between realities, drawn by the psychic emanations of intelligent life. They are coming, and when they arrive, they will consume every thinking being in this galaxy. Prophet Keltheros stepped forward, his consciousness reaching out to verify Doomright's claim. What he found in the deep void made his bioluminescence cycle through colors that had no names. He speaks truth, the Cerebrillion whispered. I can feel them ancient, hungry, vast beyond comprehension. They view organic intelligence as food. The war between us was a luxury we could afford where we were the greatest threat to each other. Doomright continued, but the Devourers care nothing for our grievances. They will consume human and alien alike with equal enthusiasm. Commander Voss stepped forward. What are you proposing? Alliance, Doomright said simply. Not forgiveness. There can be no forgiveness for genocide. Not peace. The dead cry out too loudly for peace, but cooperation in the face of mutual extinction. General Murden's scales rippled with skepticism. And why should we trust you? You've spent months exterminating our worlds. Because, Doomright replied, we are about to demonstrate the difference between punishment and necessity. The human fleet moved with mechanical precision, their ships taking positions throughout the system. But instead of targeting the remaining assembly forces, they began deploying what looked like construction equipment. Observe, Doomright commanded. The tactical display updated to show the destroyed worlds of the recent campaign. On each one, the radioactive wastelands were being systematically cleansed and rebuilt by automated systems. Poison atmospheres were filtered, irradiated soil was purified, and new cities began rising from the ashes of the old. We destroyed your civilization to prove we could, Doomright explained. Now we rebuild it to prove we should survive what's coming together. High Counselor Zephyr's energy form pulsed with confusion. I don't understand. If you could reverse the damage, why inflict it in the first place? Because Doomright's image began to fade. You needed to understand that extinction is permanent. The Devourers will not offer second chances. They will not rebuild what they consume. When they arrive and our calculations suggest 6 standard years, you will face a choice. Fight as one united species or die as separate, squabbling factions. The transmission ended, leaving the delegates alone with the magnitude of what they had learned. Outside, human ships continued their reconstruction efforts, working alongside assembly vessels and in cooperation that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. Prophet Keltheros moved to the chamber center, his bioluminescence cycling through every color in the visible spectrum. I have seen our future, he announced. Not the future we wanted, not the future we deserved, but the future we must embrace to survive. 6 years later, when the Devourers finally arrived at the galaxy's edge, they found something unprecedented waiting for them. A unified defense force commanded jointly by human and alien admirals, protected by shields that merged assembly energy, technology with Terran dimensional manipulation, and armed with weapons that represented the combined scientific achievement of 48 species. Working in desperate harmony, the war that followed would last for decades and cost billions of lives. But when the last Devourer vessel was driven back into the void, when the galaxy was finally safe from extinction, the survivors would remember that it was possible to transcend even the deepest hatred when faced with a greater threat. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as the catalyst that forced the galaxy to evolve or die. And in choosing evolution, both species had become something greater than either could have achieved alone. The age of separate civilizations was over. The age of galactic unity had begun, forged in fire and tempered by the shared knowledge that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a common purpose greater than any individual grievance. In the end, Prophet Keltheros had been right about humanity's return. He had simply been wrong about what it would ultimately mean for the galaxy's future.